From the highest mountains to the coastline and anywhere else in between, rock-type Pokemon are some of the most diverse, as well as some of the oldest Pokemon in the Pokemon universe. From friendly and helpful creatures that were revived from fossils to Pokemon who use their tough bodies to cause a lot of damage, the rock type has a lot of Pokemon to choose from. But which of these rock-type critters let their good intentions shine through their hard exteriors, and which ones truly have hearts of stone? That's what we're gonna find out today. I'm Kyle with Pokebinge, and this is Rock-type Pokemon, Good to Evil. Now, before we get started, just a couple of ground rules. We'll be judging these Pokemon by the characteristics of the species as a whole, meaning we won't be looking at any individual instances of the Pokemon in question. An exception can be made for some legendary Pokemon, but this will be on a case-by-case basis. Also, if an entire Pokemon evolutionary line shares the rock type, they'll be sharing one spot. As usual, we'll be starting with the most noble Pokemon and working our way down to the most evil. These Pokemon's rocky exteriors might be rugged and cold to touch, but they have warm hearts. These rock-type Pokemon are the good. Taking our gold medal of good, as well as being our first legendary, we have the cavern Pokemon, Terrakion. As Terrakion is one of the Pokemon that makes up the Swords of Justice family, it has a lot going for it. During an unspecified war, Terrakion fought relentlessly in order to protect and save other Pokemon who had lost their homes due to the fighting. Plus, even after the war, Terrakion continues to protect Pokemon that are weaker and are being bullied. It does seem that Terrakion can be a little reckless at times, as a few of the Pokedex entries about them mentions that Terrakion demolished the castle wall during their attempts to save others. But if some easily fixed collateral damage is the worst that Terrakion causes as they're saving others, we really can't blame them too much. From the first legendary kicking off this list, we're giving the silver medal of good to our first fossil Pokemon line, the shield Pokemon, the Bastiodon line. With a huge number of Pokemon being brought back to life from fossils, both Shieldon and Bastiodon are amongst the most peaceful of the prehistoric Pokemon. Rather than using the iron hard coverings in front of their faces to bash their enemies, Shieldon and Bastiodon are more often than not just happy munching on berries and other plants, and get along with pretty much any and all Pokemon. If they are threatened, however, Bastiodon in particular will use their huge faceplate to protect those under their care. But really, this seems like the only time when either Shieldon or Bastiodon engages in fighting with other Pokemon, for their peaceful, tight-knit attitudes, and the fact that they get along with most Pokemon. The Bastiodon line definitely deserves the silver medal of good. We're now heading over to the Galar region to hand out the bronze medal of good to the coal Pokemon, the Colossal line. Roly-Poly, Carkol, and Colossal are well known around the Galar region for their habits of both using the coal they produce with their bodies to help out with their own movements, as well as helping out the residents of Galar. Carkol and Colossal in particular are pretty highly regarded due to them not only being able to help out produce the coal for people and businesses, but also due to the fires that Carkol and Colossal creates. While all three Pokemon are pretty peaceful, Colossal are known for using their flames on those who vandalize their caves. And sure, that is pretty rough, but keep in mind, Colossal are only doing this to those who have harmed their homes. Plus, while in their Gigantamax forms, Colossal are willing to use their immense size and the heat that they produce as a large fireplace of sorts during incredibly rough winter months for any Pokemon and person. Moving on, our next spot goes to the compressed Pokemon, the Gigalith line. Roggenrola, due to their small size, is a Pokemon in this line that doesn't seem to really help others as much, but they do seem to be fairly easygoing, only becoming angry if someone puts their hands into the hole on Roggenrola's face. Boldore is by far more helpful to others, as the orange crystals that grow on Boldore's body are used as an energy source. There is the very sad fact that Boldore can sometimes be hunted due to this. As long as they're in a positive environment, they are pretty happy in letting others use the power-filled orange crystals from their bodies. Luckily for Gigalith, after they evolve from Boldore, they're not really hunted for their energy sources anymore. But as Gigalith has enough power to blow up a mountain, it's really not a surprise that no one wants to try and hunt these Pokemon. That said, Gigalith is still willing to help those who treat them right, as they are a favorite Pokemon Pokemon of construction crews, with Gigalith helping them with their building projects. The Gigalith line can encounter some rough times, no doubt, but as all 3 Pokemon don't let this hold them back, and are still willing to help others, they definitely deserve a really high ranking. Next we have another legendary with the Jewel Pokemon, Diancie. Rather than rely on Diancie's Pokedex entries, since there are only 2 entries and neither really say all too much about the Pokemon, we're going to be looking at the movie Diancie and the Cocoon of Destruction to help us out with her ranking. In the movie, Diancie is seen to be a pretty benevolent queen of the Diamond Domain, caring about the Caranks that also reside in the Diamond Domain, and treats others outside her queendom pretty decently as well. Diancie does kind of struggle with the world outside, but that in no way counts against her, and after she becomes used to the world, Diancie adapts pretty well. In addition to being very kind, Diancie is shown to be very generous and is willing to help out those in need. She can be a bit emotional at times, as she is convinced that she does not deserve to be the ruler of the Diamond Domain after it's attacked, and while that is kind of an extreme reaction, it just shows how deeply Diancie cares about her home and those who live there, and really, if getting down in the dumps is the worst we can say about her, she clearly deserves a very good ranking. Now, our first Pokemon line from the Hisui region is coming up next, that being the legendary Pokemon, the Hisuian Arcanine line. Unfortunately, as the Hisuian Arcanine line is pretty recent, we don't have all too much to go on compared to others, but we do know that much like their Kanto counterparts, Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine are a pair of incredibly powerful and loyal Pokemon, and are held in very high regard, both due to their loyalty as well as their bravery. And while both Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine have much more fur than their Kanto relatives, they don't let this slow them down, both in battle and just in regular activities. The Hisuian Arcanine line are able to move about very nimbly, with many comparing these Pokemon to dancers. We're hoping that Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine make a return in future games. Next up, we have the rock snake Pokemon, Onix. To use a phrase, Onix is the perfect Pokemon example of a gentle giant. While they do normally prefer to create tunnels underground in search of their favorite food, as well as large boulders to munch on, when Onix does come to the surface, they seem to treat any Pokemon they encounter very decently. And while Onix creates the tunnels while simply searching for food underground, the tunnels actually serve some pretty useful purposes. Specifically, the tunnels oftentimes become the home for many other Pokemon, mainly Diglett and Dugtrio. And while the argument can be made that Onix isn't really doing this to help out other Pokemon, as they're just following their nature, the fact that Onix does help others, regardless of whether intentional or not, as well as their calm attitudes, are reasons enough to place Onix here. Our second Hisuian form is taking the next spot, the iceberg Pokemon, Hisuian Avalugg. The Avalugg found in the Hisui region are considerably smaller compared to their Kalos relatives, and more often than not prefer not to interact with others. When they do come across other Pokemon and people though, Hisuian Avalugg are very docile and really don't seem to cause much trouble. Our first rock/water combo Pokemon is getting the next spot, the coral Pokemon, Corsola. Luckily for these Corsola, they've not had the unfortunate event of Galar's climate change transforming them into ghost types. Instead, these Corsola are often found in southern seas, where they're admired for their beauty, as the coral branches that grow from their bodies are said to shine with multiple colors. Apart from being just pleasant to look at, Corsola allows smaller Pokemon to use their coral branches to hide in order to escape other Pokemon hunting them. Next, we have the Tundra Pokemon, the Aurorus line. As their Pokedex title suggests, both Amura and Aurorus are often located in very cold and snowy areas. Much like the Bastiodon line, Amura and Aurorus are 2 Pokemon that are revived by a fossil, this time the Sail fossil. For the most part, the Aurorus line are fairly peaceful, though they do prefer just to socialize within their own evolutionary line. What knocks the Aurorus line down a good bit though, is the fact that they can freeze their enemies in a block of solid ice, or can cause everything to be coated in ice if they become enraged. Keep in mind though, this doesn't happen very often, and the Aurorus line does this where its enemies are concerned. It can be viewed as a defense technique more than anything else. Next, we're heading across the ocean to Alola to talk about the wolf Pokemon, the Lycanroc line. Both in the Alola region and outside of it, the Lycanroc line is highly popular, both in the games and with fans, and it's really no surprise why. Much like our other Rock Dog Pokemon family, Rockruff and Lycanroc are among the most loyal in the Pokemon universe. So why are we placing the wolf Pokemon line in the middle of our good section? Well, even though Rockruff is undoubtedly a loyal and kind Pokemon, they do develop some serious behavioral issues as they grow older, becoming aggressive and even attacking others at times. When Rockruff evolves into Lycanroc, if they get their midday or dusk forms, they seem to regain their earlier calm demeanor and really don't cause all too much trouble. But if Rockruff evolves at night and becomes Midnight Lycanroc, their aggression is really ramped up, to the point that Lycanroc will not care if they hurt themselves when attacking others. But as long as there is a strong bond between the trainer and themselves, Midnight Lycanroc will listen to them and can dial back their normal behavior. Hopping over to Paldea, we have our next trio of Pokemon, the Garganacl line. If we only focused on the two earlier evolutions, we wouldn't be surprised if you expected this evolutionary line lower in the ranking. Knucklestack in particular has a pretty harsh behavior, but it's Garganacl that brings their evolutionary line squarely into the good section. Not only do they produce salt with their bodies, but Garganacl uses it in order to help heal others. Rather than the healing process taking time, the salt that Garganacl sprinkles on other injured Pokemon instantly heals whatever wounds they have, no matter how severe they are, making the Garganacl line extremely popular in the Paldea region. We just wish that Knucklestack would stop trying to preserve others in their own fluids, which is gross. Next we have the first bird Pokemon, the Archeops line. Like their Pokedex title suggests, it's a common belief that both Archon and Archeops are the first flying type Pokemon, but unfortunately for both their additional rock typing, coupled with their underdeveloped wing muscles, Archon and Archeops are far from the best flyers. Actually, Archon can't even fly, rather getting around by hopping around. Archeops is able to take to the sky. However, it does take quite a bit of effort, as to even leave the ground, they need to take at least a 2-mile running head start, flapping their wings the entire time. Even though they are not the best flyers in the Pokemon universe, the Archeops line is believed to be amongst the most intelligent Pokemon revived by fossils, forming close-knit groups where they look out for each other, as well as to be more effective at gathering food. The phrase teamwork is key describes our next Pokemon line perfectly. The collective Pokemon, the Barbaracle line. As their Pokedex title suggests, the Barbaracle line goes from a singular Pokemon in Binacle to joining 6 other fellow Binacles to create Barbaracle, rather than some other Pokemon who join up with their fellows only to bicker or not be the most cooperative. The Barbaracle line forms pretty good teamwork, as an individual Binacle controls each part of Barbaracle's body. Next, we have the big rock Pokemon, Stonjourner. If you were to walk around the hilly region of the countryside of Galar, you might see a large rock formation forming a circle, but rather than Stonehenge from real life, Stonjourner is merely meeting with their fellow Pokemon. It isn't really known why Stonjourner has the unusual quirk, but for the most part, it is a pretty peaceful Pokemon. One of their Pokedex entries mentions that Stonjourner does cause some pretty serious damage with their kicks, but we're taking into account that it doesn't seem to really cause damage that often, and gets along well with their fellow Pokemon. With the underground and the ocean being the natural habitats of some of our previous Pokemon, it only makes sense that we make our way into the caves for the jewel Pokemon, Carbink. These gemstone-studded Pokemon are often found either on cave walls or underground in the cave's floor. Due to the many jewels that make up Carbink's body, they're often sought out thanks to their beauty. When they're alone though, Carbink does help each other out, both by using the soft manes around their heads to polish each other's jewels, as well as using the jewels on their bodies to fire powerful beams to fend off attackers. Our next Pokemon line definitely takes the phrase "follow your nose" to heart. The Compass Pokemon, the Probopass line. If you're lost and have no clue where to go in the Pokemon universe, having either Nosepass or Probopass on your team might be a good idea, as both Pokemon's large red noses will always point north, serving as a compass of sorts. And while Nosepass is more often than not happy to help travelers find their way to their destinations, Probopass can be a little more aggressive, as they tend to attack others with the mini noses that they control. Plus, due to the magnetic nature of Probopass's body, they cause electronics to go haywire if they stick around them too long. Going up to the mountains for our next Pokemon line, the Megaton Pokemon, the Golem line, takes this spot, which rounds out our good section. In the world of Pokemon, Pokemon. The Golem line is one of the more unique out there, rather than following the standard Pokedex formula, where either an aggressive Pokemon will mellow out as they evolve into their other stages or vice versa. Geodude, Graveler, and Golem go from fairly mellow to slightly reckless to fairly mellow again. Really, it seems like the only way to get Geodude to ditch their usual calm behavior is if someone were to accidentally step on them, and we can't really blame Geodude for that. With Graveler, they pose a much bigger possible threat. A favorite hobby of Graveler is for them to go tumbling down whatever mountains they call home at breakneck speeds, not really caring what or who they might hurt. And that's not great. And if Graveler was the final Pokemon in this line, we would definitely place them below in the gray area. But with Golem, they take a deep breath and calm way down, as an added bonus to Golem not possibly causing damage to others or the environment. They actually go the opposite way, as during the course of their lives, Golems shed the hard shell that covers a majority of their bodies, which then crumbles and helps fertilize the earth as the shell decomposes. And with our good section wrapped up, we now enter more neutral territory. These rock-type Pokemon fall in the gray area. Kicking off this section, we have the first space-themed rock type on our list, the Meteor Pokemon, Minior. For the most part, Minior seems to be a pretty happy-go-lucky Pokemon, perpetually floating in the air. And while Minior has their features hidden when they're in their Meteor forms, after the hard crust that covers Minior's body breaks away, it reveals a huge smile and googly eyes when they're in their core form. One of the more alarming facts about Minior, though, is they cannot survive long after they're in their core form. But if they're kept in their Pokeball, they should be okay. We'd really like to rank them higher, but they've only appeared in a few games so far, and not much of their actual behavior is all too well known. The tree lookalike Pokemon family is coming in next, the Sudowoodo line. While Sudowoodo is a mostly calm and peaceful Pokemon, who is beloved by a wide range of trainers, mainly the elderly due to their appearance, what brings this Pokemon line to the top of the gray area is Bonsly, the first Pokemon in the evolutionary family. Bonsly does have a pretty peaceful attitude as well, sure, but unlike Sudowoodo, it has a bad habit of crying fairly often, and although sadness is a natural emotion, Bonsly doesn't shed tears due to them feeling any strong emotions that would cause them to cry, but rather as a tactic to get out of trouble or to get something they want. And while it is a very young Pokemon, using emotions to manipulate others is not great. We are glad that Sudowoodo seems to grow out of this behavior after they evolve, but they'll also attack others if they happen to get any amount of water on them. Next we have the mold Pokemon, Shuckle. In the world of Pokemon, not a whole lot is known about Shuckle. What we do know about this turtle-like Pokemon though, is not only are Shuckle normally pretty peaceful, they also usually collect various berries and ferment them within their shell. This is said to produce a juice that is delicious. And while we're all for adventurous eating, drinking a juice that is produced in the body of a Shuckle doesn't exactly make our mouths water. And unfortunately, that is really the only prominent fact known about Shuckle, landing it here in the gray area. Our first Ultra Beast from Alola is taking the next spot, the Rampart Pokemon, Stakataka. One of the biggest as well as the heaviest rock type, it definitely has a lot of power going for it. And while Stakataka is one of the many Ultra Beasts, compared to some of the fellow Pokemon that find their way to Alola via the Ultra Wormholes, this is one of the more peaceful ones of the bunch. It's believed to be many life forms joining together in order to make a singular Pokemon, but with the high walls that cover its body and minimal opportunities to glimpse through the walls, no one really knows what this Pokemon looks like. Its mysterious appearance aside, like we said, out of the Ultra Beasts, Stakataka is one of the calmer ones. Our next entrant is an unofficial fossil Pokemon, the longevity Pokemon, Relicanth. Often found in the deeper parts of the ocean, Relicanth has records of their existence dating back as far as 100 million years ago. Unlike some other prehistoric Pokemon, it really doesn't have any natural prey or predators, and are instead just content on feeding on microscopic fragments along the ocean floor. Next up, we have the ancestor of modern bug-type Pokemon, the Plate Pokemon, the Armaldo line. Anorith and Armaldo are pretty unique, not only amongst the other fossil Pokemon, but just all Pokemon in general. While Anorith used to swim in the sea, using their wings to help propel themselves in the water, after they evolve into Armaldo, they mostly abandon their swimming ways and instead opt to use their newly grown legs to walk on the land instead. And while there are Pokedex entries about both using their claws in order to capture prey. None of them really go into too much detail other than that. Now, we might be cheating a little bit with this next entry, as we're splitting it between two Pokemon. But as the planetary lookalike Pokemon Solrock and Lunatone are both known as the Meteorite Pokemon, and not a whole lot else is known about either, we feel pretty comfortable with the joint ranking. Where Solrock is concerned, this Pokemon uses their bodies to produce intense light, which they do sometimes use in battle to blind their opponents. And that is a pretty harsh tactic to use just to win a fight. Lunatone does seem to have a more mild battling style, more often than not using their power to lull whomever they're fighting into a deep sleep. And as Solrock and Lunatone are essentially the non-official Sun and Moon Pokemon respectively, it really doesn't come as a huge shock that these Meteorite Pokemon have these qualities. Our next Pokemon line is a classic case of don't judge a book by its cover, because we have the drill Pokemon, the Rhyperior line, up next. Rhyhorn, Rhydon, and Rhyperior might look like a trio of rough and tough Pokemon, and while that is true, all three of these Pokemon in the drill Pokemon line do have a calmer side than their looks might suggest. Rhyhorn does cause damage on occasion, with them being able to send semi-trucks flying with their tackles. Rather than looking to cause trouble though, the sad fact is Rhyhorn is too dumb to really think about more than one thing at a time, so we're chalking their actions up to accidents. Really expensive and dangerous accidents. After Rhyhorn evolves into Rhydon, they don't really gain any additional brain power, but they do seem to mellow out quite a bit. Rhydon is more often than not found just relaxing in a pool of lava, and do seem to get along pretty well with others. Once they reach their final stage and evolve into Rhyperior, rather than owning up to their somewhat intimidating appearance, Rhyperior maintains Rhydon's normal calm behavior. What does count against Rhyperior, however, is that when they do battle, they're known to sometimes shoot Geodudes and other smaller rock-type Pokemon from their hands. So yeah, using unwilling Pokemon as projectiles against your opponents is not great. Next we have the Ore Pokemon, the Glimmora line. Both Glimmet and Glimmora have petals made of crystallized poison attached to their bodies. Rather than being a fancy and dangerous accessory, however, the petals are more of a defensive maneuver, as they shake them to spread clouds of toxic particles if they're attacked. Glimmora's petals in particular are said to look like the Terra Jewels found throughout the Paldea region. Outside of this, however, we really don't have much else to go on, so we're placing Glimmora here in the middle of the gray section. Next up, we have the lava Pokemon, Magcargo. As Magcargo can produce a heat of 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit, saying to be cautious with this Pokemon is a massive understatement. That said, they're not actively looking to cause harm. By all accounts, Magcargo is usually a relatively peaceful Pokemon, and is able to control the intense heat they can cause with their bodies. But while it isn't trying to burn everything in sight, we do have to take into account the damage that can happen if Magcargo either loses control or attacks others. Unlike some of the other rock-type Pokemon who can cause damage higher on our list, such as the Sudowoodo or Golem lines, whose range of damage is either limited to a certain environment or in certain events, Magcargo really doesn't have that luxury. If they decide to use their fire, you can bet everything will probably be turned to ash, regardless of where Magcargo may be. And that's bad. Slipping into the sea, we find our next fossil Pokemon, the Spiral Pokemon, the Amistar line. When it comes to both Ammonite and Amistar, these Pokemon often use their many tentacles to reach and snag unwary Pokemon before munching away on them. And while Pokemon need to eat, Ammonite and Amistar aren't the best hunters out there due to the weight of the large shells on their backs, keeping them mostly rooted to a single spot. It's a common belief that both Pokemon had so much difficulty in moving, it was a largely contributing factor to Ammonite and Amistar going extinct in the first place. Next, we have another fossil Pokemon, the Barnacle Pokemon, the Cradily line. Lileep and Cradily, as their Pokédex title implies, are found latched onto rocks in large bodies of water, despite the fact that they're some of the very few water-dwelling Pokemon who are not water types. However, Lileep and Cradily don't let their unusual living conditions hinder their grass-rock typing. Instead, they both secrete a strong acid from the tentacles attached to their heads, using them as a way to snag their prey, before swallowing it whole, which is a rough way to go. Our next legendary Pokemon shares a similarity with Terrakion, as they're both members of a much larger Pokemon family. Rounding out our gray area, we have the rock peak Pokemon, Regirock. As studies have shown that Regirock doesn't have either a heart or a brain, we can't help but feel like if Regirock found itself alongside Dorothy and Oz, the wizard would have his work cut out for him. So we'll just focus on its actions in the movie Lucario and the Mystery of Mew. During the course of the movie, Regirock pursues and attempts to attack anyone who approaches the Tree of Beginning, perceiving anyone who Regirock encounters as a threat. And while that's not great, Regirock does have an understandable motive, as it simply wants to protect the tree. Eventually, Regirock does leave the heroics of the movie alone and goes back into the chamber. We're placing Regirock down this low due to the harm its actions could have caused, but as it also stops trying to attack and chase those around the tree, after Regirock realizes they are not a threat, we'll avoid ranking our Rock Peak Pokemon in the bad section. We finally get to our last category. It's time to examine the Rock-type Pokemon whose actions truly prove they have hearts of stone. These Pokemon are the bad and the evil. Kicking off this section, we have a pair of grumpy bug/rock types, the Stone Home Pokemon, the Crystalline. With Dwebble, the first Pokemon in this evolutionary line, they normally act as an average bug-type Pokemon, using their claws to hollow out a rock to call its home, and carrying it on their backs. The evolved Crustle, however, is much more aggressive. Crustle uses their incredibly tough claws to attack both other Crustle, as well as much larger Pokemon such as Rhyperior. We have our final Pokemon from the Paldea region up next, the ambush Pokemon, Klawf. Often found clinging to mountainsides, Klawf uses their camouflage in order to catch its prey by surprise before dropping down on them and attacking. However, Klawf can't do this for too long, as its position of choice also causes all the blood to rush to Klawf's head. When they do manage to attack their target, however, Klawf can be pretty dangerous, using their unique movements to confuse whatever unfortunate Pokemon they're targeting before attacking them viciously with their claws. Our next Pokemon in the fossil line could be considered king of the fossils because the Tyrantrum line's Pokédex title is the Despot Pokemon. Tyrant and Tyrantrum are a pair of Pokemon revived by fossils and are said to have been pretty vicious when they roamed freely nearly 100 million years ago. Even though both Tyrant and Tyrantrum were often feared in the past, however, both Pokemon also had a high level of respect from the other Pokemon, with some records saying they had a magnificent presence about them. And unlike some of the other fossil types who caused quite a bit of damage, really the only records that mention the Tyrantrum's viciousness is when it's relating to their hunting habits. In modern times, Tyrant and Tyrantrum can cause damage to things like cars, and they're known well for their viciousness. These next fossil Pokemon are constantly butting heads with each other, both figuratively and literally. The Headbutt Pokemon, the Rampardos line. While some Pokemon on this list are prone to cause damage without intending it, the Rampardos line really can't make that claim, either as the pre-evolved Cranidos or Rampardos. Both of these Pokemon love to charge at people and other Pokemon full force in order to smash their heads into them. Whatever damage the Rampardos line causes, though, is almost always guaranteed to be pretty significant, all because of the rock-hard nature of their skulls. And happily causing damage is pretty awful, as well as trying to hurt others with their devastating headbutts. Our final regional form is coming up next. From across the sea, the Megaton Pokemon, the Alolan Golem line. Unlike their mainline counterparts, the Alolan Golem line are a trio of bad-tempered Pokemon, as they've acquired the additional Electric type in addition to the Rock type. Geodude, Graveler, and Golem now use their new skills to zap and attack others in their area. With Geodude and Graveler, they're known for releasing the electricity stored in their bodies to attack those around them, with the electric shocks causing severe numbness in those who get hit by them. With Alolan Golem, not only do they still enjoy shocking others with the electricity they control, but they also have the habit of using the makeshift cannon on their backs to fire boulders and even Geodudes at high speeds. If you're around the Bite Pokemon, you'll want to stay far away from its mouth, because Dreadnought has a seriously powerful set of jaws. Dreadnought are one of the most vicious and difficult Pokemon to work with in all of the rock types, regardless of whom they come across. Dreadnought will strike out and chomp down with their incredibly strong bite, and getting them to let go is nearly impossible at times. After Dreadnought gains its ability to Gigantamax, they really aren't as mobile as before. However, due to them growing to the size of a small mountain, Dreadnought has discovered that they're able to crush others with their increased weight. What prevents Dreadnought from falling any lower is if they're paired with a trainer they deem is worthy and strong enough. They are a fairly loyal Pokemon. Taking our next spot, we have the Iron Armor Pokemon, the Aggron line. In some of our previous entries, there have been Pokemon in the evolutionary line that either act aggressive early on and then mellow out, or vice versa. With Aron, Lyron, and Aggron, however, all three have some behavioral issues that are definitely not the best. Aron is probably the most mild out of the three, though they're considered a pest by many, as a majority of their diet consists of things such as cars, railroad tracks, and other metal items that are either really expensive to replace or can cause some pretty heavy damage. Lyron, even though they seem to have ditched snacking on metal items for the most part, preferring to eat iron ones, they're still very aggressive, using their iron-coated bodies to perform high-speed devastating tackles. And after Lyron finally evolves into Aggron, their attitude takes another dip, as Aggron will attack anyone and anything that they encounter in their environment. And if you think you can hide, good luck, because Aggron is said to be constantly on the outlook for others invading their territory. That said, Aggron does have a tiny bit of good qualities going for them, as they're known to occasionally turn over the topsoil of their environment, helping the plant life grow beautifully and flourish. We have our second to last water-based fossil Pokemon taking the next spot, the Proto-Turtle Pokemon, the Caracosta line. Turtoga and Caracosta are a pair of Pokemon with some pretty impressive swimming skills, with Turtoga in particular being able to dive up to a half a mile with relative ease. Rather than just doing this for fun though, Turtoga and Caracosta use their nimble aquatic movements to track down their prey. Caracosta in particular has the more disturbing Pokédex entries about their eating habits, as there are quite a few mentioning that whatever unfortunate Pokemon that Caracosta catches will be eaten entirely, bones and all. And while Turtoga mostly hunts in the sea, due to them not being the most mobile on land, Caracosta will go out of the water in order to capture prey as well, before dragging it back to the sea in order to drown them, before devouring them whole. In addition to their pretty disturbing eating habits, Caracosta can cause some serious damage, with them damaging ships and iron beams on occasion. Our second to last ancient Pokemon is up next, the fossil Pokemon Aerodactyl. Much more aggressive than most of the other Pokemon revived by fossils, Aerodactyl calls the sky its home as it flies around looking for prey. After catching whatever unfortunate Pokemon in its sharp talons, Aerodactyl tears at them with their incredibly sharp saw-like teeth. Outside of its hunting habits, Aerodactyl are known to terrorize others with their fierce and dangerous behavior. After Aerodactyl are able to Mega Evolve, their viciousness gets ramped up to 11. Though a sad note is that Aerodactyl only becomes more vicious due to the amount of pain they are experiencing due to Mega Evolution. Several Pokemon in this category could really benefit from a good anger management session, but the Axe Pokemon, Cleaver, is one of the best contenders out there. While the people of Hisui are known to use the stone fragments that fall from Cleaver's body as tools or weapons, Cleaver is not actively looking to help others. Quite the opposite, actually. If someone were to come across Cleaver in the wild, we have some pretty simple advice. Run, and run fast, because Cleaver will use the axe-like blades on their arms to swing wildly and pursue their target relentlessly. And while having a severe anger problem is absolutely awful, compared to our top 3 most evil rock-type Pokemon, Cleaver isn't quite that bad. Which brings us to our final fossil-type Pokemon line, as well as the winners for the bronze medal of evil, the Shellfish Pokemon, the Kabutops line. We've mentioned other Pokemon hunting and eating, so why are we placing the Shellfish Pokemon line so far down our evil list? For a start, Kabutops probably has the most graphic Pokédex entries when it comes to their eating habits, slicing their prey with the sharp blades growing out of their arms before drinking their fluids. Gross. Kabuto is undoubtedly the more mild of these two Pokemon, as the majority of the Pokédex entries just mention mention how they were received from their fossils, and how they mainly lived in the sea. But we have to rank this line here, because of Kabutop's vicious hunting habits and bloodthirsty nature. To paraphrase from Marvel's The Hulk, you don't want to make our next Pokemon line angry. You won't like the armor Pokemon when they're angry. That of course being the Tyranitar line, the winner of our silver medal of evil. Larvitar, the first Pokemon in this evolutionary line, seems to be the calmest when compared to Pupitar and Tyranitar. That being said, Larvitar does have quite the appetite, with multiple Pokedex entries mentioning that they have to eat an entire mountain in order to get enough energy to evolve. After Larvitar eventually evolves into Pupitar, even though they're lacking any limbs whatsoever, it can still cause a lot of trouble. They're able to produce pressurized gases and utilize them in order to propel their bodies at high speeds and crash into anything and everything they encounter. Rather than trying to eat a mountain, at the speed Pupitar rockets around, they're able to reduce a mountain to rubble, and when it finally evolves into Tyranitar, their destructive ways get ramped up to a whole new level. Instead of just being content in crashing mountains to crumble, it's said that when Tyranitar gets angry, entire maps need to be redrawn due to the huge amount of damage that Tyranitar causes. And good luck if someone tries to attack Tyranitar when they're on a rampage, as they'll most likely either ignore the assault or simply turn their would-be opponent into gooey paste. And of course, when Tyranitar reaches their Mega Evolution form, their sole thought is simple and frightening: destroy everything. Nothing is safe when this Pokemon loses their temper. For the sheer amount of damage they cause and their uncontrollable rage, the Tyranitar line more than deserves the silver medal of evil. With a legendary kicking off this entire ranking, it only seems fitting that we end with one for our gold medal of evil, the Parasite Pokemon, Nihilego. Possession, aggressive behavior, and searching for power. To say that this Ultra Beast is one of the most dangerous Pokemon in the Alola region is a massive understatement. Nihilego does not care who it targets. It just wants power and is willing to do anything possible in order to get it. The neurotoxin that Nihilego injects into its victims can cause both severe mental and physical trauma, sometimes leaving whoever is affected by it in critical condition. That, coupled with the fact that Nihilego is able to open ultra wormholes due to being an Ultra Beast and actively causes harm and trouble to the Alolan region, and has zero remorse for its actions, are reasons well enough for us to give the Parasite Pokemon our gold medal of evil. And with that said, with our morality spectrum complete, let's wrap up this video by awarding some Sinner medals. We're giving our Darwin medal to the Rhyperior line. Yeah, Rhyhorn and Rhyperior don't seem to have the limited smarts that Rhyhorn does, but as the first Pokemon in this line has multiple Pokedex entries, mentioning that they aren't the brightest bulbs of the bunch, they're a pretty good contender for this award. The Sloth award goes to the Cradily line, as both Lileep and Cradily literally anchor themselves to the floor, and moving is never a priority for either. For the Pride award, we're giving it to both Carbink and Diancie, as both Pokemon seem to enjoy others observing and admiring the jewels that grow on their bodies. The Gluttony award has to go to the Kabutops line. All Pokemon eat, sure, but as Kabutops seems to have the most graphic info about their eating habits, they're the clear winners here. As for the Wrath award, that goes to Tyranitar, because if they lose their temper, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion something is getting destroyed. And finally, our Greed medal has to go to Nihilego, as not only does this Pokemon want to have others under its control, it's also very good at its goal as well. But let us know in the comments section what you think. What's your favorite Rock-type Pokemon, and which one do you think is the most good and the most evil? Be sure to hit that notification bell and binge our other Pokemon videos here on PokeBinge, your hub for all things Pokemon. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.